Nassau County released around 30 inmates from its jail Tuesday under changes from a new state bail reform law. But a county official and a union leader claim the law has prompted the release of many more inmates since November 1st. The new state law eliminates cash bail for defendants facing misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. The release of additional inmates has created concern among some Nassau residents, prompting Nassau County Executive Laura Curran and Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder to hold a news conference. We previously mentioned announcing increased police patrols, bus routes, and other measures. According now to Brian Sullivan, president of the Nassau County Sheriff's Correction Officers Benevolent Association, the facility had been releasing an unusually high number of inmates and receiving an inordinately low number of new inmates over the past 2 months. Consequently, Sullivan alleged this was a result of the new bail reform law. Sullivan, a lieutenant who has worked at the facility for 31 years, believed the gradual release of inmates, quote, was done to mitigate a mass exodus so it didn't look like the whole world was coming to an end, unquote. Well, the new law passed the Democratic-controlled state legislature in April, and advocates say it will prevent people from being held in jail just because they can't afford to pay for bail. Opponents say the law will release dangerous people and drug dealers into the community. Well, in October, Nassau County officials estimated that about 300 inmates were eligible for release under the new law based on the jail population count at the time of 1,100 people. Well, that estimate was reduced 2 weeks ago to 175 inmates as the jail population dropped to 986. And as of Monday morning, the jail population was down to 884 inmates. Members of the Long Island Republican delegation on Tuesday called for the bail reform law to be amended. They want to grant judges the discretion to hold a person in jail if the judge believes the person is a danger to the community. So Governor Cuomo estimates that new law will keep about 90% of defendants out of jail, at least until their case gets resolved. So on the phone with us, I hope, we have Craig Schneider. Hello, Craig.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, very good. Well, Craig is from
Newsday.
Newsday.
The piece that you wrote.
I don't hear you.
Sorry about that.
There you
the
go.
piece that you wrote most recently was entitled, as we stated, Nassau has been releasing many inmates since November 1st, and that was released at the first of the year. So we wanted to have you on to discuss just, again, a little bit more context about the issue that is catching a lot of headlines and attention from the community.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it looks like you were saying, Bill, that, again, there has been talk of their preparations being made ahead of time. I know we spoke about before Commissioner Ryder and County Executive Curran making some measures ahead of time, but we didn't hear about until maybe your piece and later on that there was some potential internal procedures to kind of lower the amount that were released on New Year's Day. So do you want to speak a little bit more about that specifically?
Sure. What had happened is I had gone down to the jail on Tuesday, really to cover these 30 inmates coming out and to speak to a couple of them. But it was during my conversation with the head of the Correction Officers Union, Brian Sullivan, when he was saying, they've been releasing inmates now for 2 months, and they've just been doing it quietly. And he said that there has been a virtual exodus of inmates, sometimes 5 to 10 a day, and then they were getting far fewer inmates in from the courts. And he was of the opinion that it was because they were trying to get ahead of the law and wanted to space this out so the news would only be about 30 inmates coming out rather than what he thought was maybe 100 or 200.
Right. When you showed up there Tuesday, did you expect 175 inmates to be released?
No, I expected 30.
Oh, you did? Because from what I had read, I was expecting 175.
The number kept changing.
Right.
Yeah.
I was wondering where they were, I don't know. I'm sitting here, I'm a Monday morning quarterback pretty much because is the fact that they got ahead of this, is that a bad thing?
Or is it
I don't know. I guess it
is it being perceived as that? Is that the issue?
I mean,
well, the issue that the union chief had, Brian Sullivan, was that this was done for kind of a PR purpose.
Right. So basically, what he's saying is it didn't look bad enough.
Politically,
he wanted it to look worse when the press got there.
I hear you.
I don't know.
Right, because he was thinking that if you had a few hundred inmates coming out at one time,
right,
more of a spectacle,
that
of course.
it would alarm the public more than just 30.
We understand.
Yeah. I would also think, I mean, if these guys get whoever it is and they get released early, doesn't that also give local law enforcement a kind of heads up on who's out there?
Yes. They know. Yeah, they know who's out there,
and they can kind of keep an eye on these people. Or if they get a call from a certain area or even a residence, they would know where they're supposed to live. To me, that would seem to me that would give them a heads up on who's going to cause trouble, or most likely, rather than not knowing it all. I get they would have been locked up otherwise, right?
At the same time, you shouldn't think that law enforcement is uniformly behind this measure. This morning I covered a press conference in which the Nassau County Police Commissioner, Patrick Ryder, criticized the new bail reform law, and he pointed to two recent cases in which people were arrested, let go on bail, and almost immediately went out and committed new crimes.
Yeah, I saw the... Yeah,
and that's happened since the start of the new year. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And he was saying, and then we got a statement came out from the Suffolk County Sheriff saying, also critical of the new law, but in particular, both officials have called for something of a revamp of the new law, in that to give judges the discretion to assign bail to a particular person who they think has a high chance of going out and committing a new crime, perhaps a person who has a long criminal record behind them. Right. In these cases, both of the individuals in Nassau had some indications of emotional problems.
Wow.
And what the commissioner was saying is that getting them into the system is actually a way to help them get care because there are professionals in the system.
Okay, and to that point, I know that we read in your story there was one specific individual that you spoke about who was interviewed and talking about that there was someone basically to meet him there to help take him to like a drug crisis, drug treatment rehabilitation center. So that kind of speaks to your point of I know that they were trying to line up ahead of time the access to county resources for at-risk populations before they let out. So this
woman was waiting for him like right outside the gate, and they got in the car and took off, and she was from some facility. There was some preparation. Another fellow that I spoke to, it was kind of interesting, and it was creating a little bit of dissonance there, in that he came out and he had been accused of assault 3, which under the new law, in most instances, bail cannot be given to somebody charged with a misdemeanor or a nonviolent felony.
Right.
This gentleman, he told me, had gotten into an argument with his father, and next thing you know, the police were there and charging him with having a knife and intending to use it. That, to some folks, might look like pretty close to a violent crime, but again, assault 3 is a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
So he was released
based on the statute, of course. Okay.
Well, I'm, in the I don't know. What reasons do you see that? What prompted the state to do this? There's got to be some reason for a plus about this law.
There was years of advocates pushing for this type of law to try to help people who, again, what we spoke about before,
languishing in jail.
That's how
is that the sole? That's the sole reason for this, other than the amount of money.
It was said that there were so many people who couldn't afford bail, and they end up
staying in jail,
weeks, if not months, in jail.
Yeah.
Well, there were a couple of cases that spent a few
for
years.
misdemeanors and nonviolent crimes.
Right. And how that could potentially affect recidivism with people being out of the workforce and how it affects family life and career. So.
I mean, when you look at so nonviolent misdemeanors and felonies, those people won't be jailed. How much money is that going to save the taxpayer?
And
go ahead. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. But
okay.
That's going to be a study down in the future, but I'm sure it's going to be considerable.
No, and to that point, just thinking about how much we always hear about how the court systems are caught up with lots of people having to essentially kind of plea down and dockets being extremely long and it taking a long time to kind of move through the system. We wonder how much that will affect that process and hopefully save the county some cost that way too, I wonder.
But I'll tell you this, that Brian Sullivan, the corrections officers union chief, was saying, that the state was doing this simply as a way to save money.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I could see that, right. I think like most things that we seem to deal with these days, our discussions in the future, next month, a month there, are going to be about all the unintended consequences, all the things nobody saw that would result from doing something like this.
Latent,
Right. The Nassau Police Commissioner is already bringing it up, and this law went into effect on Wednesday, and here we are on Friday, and it's already creating a stir.
Oh, certainly. But we're only talking about 1 or 2 or 3 cases. It was 175 people that got away, got away. I don't mean to put it.
I don't know exactly what the number.
But you know what I mean. The percentage is.
But that's what catches the attention. The ones
right.
who act.
But it's relatively small,
right? And the commissioner earlier today brought up, particularly mentioned the recidivism rate, which I think he had said was 40 or 42%, and that worried him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but it'll take some time for us to get a proper data set, I'm sure, like you said, to see how it really spans out the program over the year. But to the point of some of the pushback, it seems like the main method that I think was it town or county Republicans and other people who are kind of against the measure, they're pushing for potentially an amendment to the law. Does that seem like the course of action that people who are, again, in that position are looking toward?
They're certainly looking for a change. And you're right, there was a Republican delegation that got together earlier this week and released a statement. Again, a lot of it right now is focused on giving the judges discretion. So we'll have to just see what happens.
I didn't initially realize that that discretion had been removed. I thought at least at that level, or there would be somebody who could say, well, you know what, this guy should go to jail and he should stay there and his bail ought to be this.
I guess the discretion comes into place or comes into effect post, I guess, meeting that bar to be released.
Well, and we also have the issues with the English language, a nonviolent felony. It's like you said, a guy was found with a knife. He didn't hurt anybody, but he was going to assault somebody. Have that in mind. Is that a violent or is a potentially violent situation? Can you consider that person under the new law, or should he?
Right, and I thought it was also interesting that the issue of mental illness.
Oh, that's
and what role that might play.
That's a whole other can of worms.
To treatment, of course.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've always wondered about police training and people with dementia or any kind of mental, when they arrive on a scene. Yeah. You need some people who can evaluate and say, you know what, we have a situation here.
Like EDP calls and stuff like that.
So put your guns away and let's see if we can...
Well, de-escalate. It's not an easy thing for anyone, especially in a stressful situation. So I'm sure more attention has been put toward that part of the training.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, again, does it seem like this issue will kind of quiet down anytime soon? It seems like, over the holiday kind of break, it seemed like this was one of the issues in the news that was most talked about out here on Long Island. So is there anything that we should expect this week, again, to change that, or should we expect it to still be kind of discussed in that way?
I don't know to tell you the truth, but I mean, here we are 2 days in, and you've got county law enforcement officials already weighing in on this.
We just had the new Town of Hempstead supervisor on the line who was giving us his opinion and how he also kind of feels that it was a little bit misguided and, kind of questions the validity of the reasoning for the state Senate and Assembly to pass through the legislation. So, like you said, it seems like something that, if not now, definitely during the election cycle, will be continually discussed.
We'll all get to talk about, the results as the year unfolds. Because I'm sure we'll see ramifications one way or the other.
And
exactly.
One last follow-up about, I guess, something that we talked about before. We know that they put in those measures for January 1st, rather, including like the additional police patrols and the increased like nice bus lines. Do we expect those policies to stay into the future, or was that something just meant for the initial kind of wave of releases?
I don't know, to tell you the truth, but I do know that they're increasing. Today, the police commissioner of Nassau was saying that they're increasing patrols now throughout the county in reaction to the increased tension regarding Iran.
Yes,
interesting.
Yes, everybody
that
is.
He was shifting personnel from other jobs to step up that level of security.
Interesting.
Not to mention, or not to overlook the anti-Semitic attacks or the uptick in those apparent.
Right. They already increased patrols because of that towards the Jewish communities and the synagogues.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, it's even more.
Yes, the mayor of New York just spoke about that, too.
No, definitely. Yeah. And was that an independent decision by the county to try to, again, push resources in that direction? Or is that something that comes down from the state level, do you know? Or...
Oh, it was my sense that it was the county.
Okay.
That, he was announcing it as... an initiative that they were taking.
I see. But just like with the mayor, they didn't speak to any specific credible threats or anything along those lines.
No.
Right? Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Well, Craig, since this is definitely going to go on, I hope we speak to you in the future. Is this your story? You're going to stay with this, or?
I imagine I will, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Very
we'll be
good.
following.
Yeah, so we have all the history in one place. We got you, Craig. Well, listen, thank you very much for calling in, and we hope to talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Have a good rest of your weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
And we want to thank Newsday, as always, for letting us talk to the reporters, and Craig Schneider from Newsday, who has been following the story and wrote the story.